got to learn how to get up.
Yeah. That's right.
Amen. There are many things that's available to us, but you got to learn how to get up.
That's right.
Amen. You got to learn how to rise above your circumstance. Amen. You can find fault. You can talk about what you could have done, what you should have done, but I stopped by to tell you that you need to get up and do it.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Hempstead was basically an agricultural town, but we didn't hang out in this part of town. This was the Hempstead High School and football stadium right here, and we didn't come down here until the schools were integrated. When I was discharged from the service, there were still a few people still picking cotton in 1968.
You had two separate entities. You had a group of people that were over here and a group of people over here that had no relationship whatsoever.
You know, there were water fountains that had colored and white. There were restrooms that had colored and white. And at the counters where they had the fountains for the public, you could purchase whatever, but you couldn't sit and drink or eat at.
If you got a sandwich, you went to a back door to get that sandwich, you know. And there was a time when even here in this little county, black men walking down the street could not meet a white woman on the street. He had to get off.
We were just simply discriminated against because it was told to us or kind of shown to us that the other world is better.
As a kid coming up, I didn't think, I didn't even feel that we had made a contribution. You know, I didn't know that we had done anything other than pick cotton.
It was visible. See, when you walk down the streets and meet people and you expected to stand to the side while they pass, or when you stand within earshot of elderly people being abused by other people of other races, it was a type of racism, really, that you begin to take on. You begin to take on this defensive attitude. And this is the attitude that most young blacks had and many still do.
I'll never will forget, my mother was working for a lady. And the lady that she worked for, her kids and I were the same age. And maybe I was a year or two older than her sons and daughters. And I couldn't understand why they could call my mother Bertha. And I had to say Miss So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so. Now, they're younger than I. And I asked my mother, I wanted to know, because I didn't like it. You know, and yet I couldn't accept her answer. You know, how can this be?
Samswa School was an outgrowth of all the schools in the area, all the rural schools. And it was the school where the black kids went.
The teachers spent from their pockets for the most part, are providing things for the students that was an extra other than a textbook.
I remember as a very young person how we would go to the railroad when the books were shipped into Hempstead. I don't know where they came from, but we would go pick them up. I went with the principal many times, and we'd go pick them up and we'd take them to the school, the white school, and stack them in the library and put them on the shelves or whatever, and take those and bring them back to our school. Take the ones that we took off the shelves and brought them back to our schools.
I remember when I was in the 3rd grade, I had one book that was assigned to me that was real loose, ragged. It had several names of other people that it had prior to me. The pages were ruffled and some torn. And I kept it for the whole year, and at the end of the year, it just totally disintegrated on me. It fell apart, and my mom had to pay for that, and that really tore me up.
We would march over here, our band. We marched from Sam Swat School down 6th Street. Place has a lot of fond memory where we played football, performed at halftime activities.
I remember the district football game that we won. It was my grandfather was not a person that even came out to games, but he came out, and you know, the stadium was just packed. We didn't have a stadium at that time. You heard about that, didn't you?
As a coach in Hempstead, I had friends coaching in Brenham, Navasota, Carbondale, and they got pretty good equipment. They were taking pretty good care of as far as the equipment's concerned. And their coaches would, I suppose if it was known, they probably got fired, but they would give me equipment. And it was, sometime we'd be going to play a game, and I'd stop through, had 2 or 3 boys I couldn't put in uniform because I didn't have enough equipment, and I'd stop by and pick up some additional equipment and go on and play.
Somebody would ask us, "Are you going to football games?" Yeah, well, wait, it's at the white school. And that's okay. We wanted to go because that's truly where it was.
I never forget in '57 when he led me in my first game, and we was playing Brookshire, and the rest of our team had on white togs and white pants and a gold jersey, and Richmond Thompson and I were the only two that didn't have suits like everybody else.
On the uniform we borrowed from another school.
Wait a minute. and we were so far out in the head of them, so coach say, Richmond, Lee, go in there and get so-and-so. So we went out there, and we had on the same colored jersey that the other team did. And the first play, they fumbled the ball, and I recovered, and I jumped up, hollering and going on, and Bubba Lucius gave the ball back to Brookshire. I said, well, I covered the ball. He said, well, get out of here. You got on the wrong color uniform.
It was just great to be able to see them walk out and give the trophy, to the coach and the quarterback, for the football games. And it was just great. And to be able as a youngster to sit and watch the trophies, it gave you an incentive to know that I want to compete. I want a trophy in this case. I want to do something that people will recognize that I'm somebody. I'm a person of worth.
This was a little small black community area from here back about 2 or 3 blocks, and they call it Sweet Bottom. I have classmates and schoolmates all grew up in this part of town.
When I went to school at Sam Swat's, buses had just begun to run, and I lived about 4 miles out. Okay, the bus would come within 2 blocks and pick up white kids and pass by me and throw dust on me. And I had to walk my way all the way to Sam Swat School.
The only thing that blacks and white really had in common that they were aware of is that blacks provided the labor force, and that was usually limited to domestics. And any person that had achieved some degree of education, they either taught school or left Hempstead. I'm sure that my classmates and the people that went to school under me never realized the kind of person that we had in our community. He was first of all, he was very smart.
Very sharp. Did a lot of reading. Knew a lot about how to get along with people and how to bring diversity together. But at the time that was happening, you didn't know why he was doing the things that he was doing or why he behaved like he behaved. But he knew.
I'll recite an incident that occurred that I never forgot. And it's comical. And a person listening would think that it never happened. It's impossible. It couldn't have happened. But a friend of mine and I was riding with him in his car, and he was coming from Highway 6 in Florida, Navasota. And when we got to the red light, one of the school board members, who was the president of the school board at that time, was coming in the other direction, but his light was green, was red. He stopped and beckoned him to come across. And we just were dumbfounded. We just couldn't imagine this man. He's just insisting that this man go in front of him. And we were so angry that this could happen. And he didn't move. He sat there until the light changed and allowed that person to go. And we came, but boy, this just welled up in us.
We thought they were being flunkies. That's what we said. That's what we said as children.
I used to look at Mr. Donaldson and I'd get kind of mad with him because I used to see him driving the bus and cleaning up at the Ford plant and a lot of things that I thought was beneath his dignity because he was my principal. But I was a silly girl, a silly kid who did not know that school teachers didn't make any money.
There were a lot of things that we would see him doing that we thought as children that it was like, we would say, buttering up to the whites.
That irritated me grossly because, you know, he was somebody as far as the kids and our community was concerned, and we thought that was beneath him, and that whoever asked that of him, who in the Sam Facts did they think they were, and what gave them that right, you know?
The community just, oh, they were just incensed. They didn't like that. Because these were our people. These were the people that we chose to put on a pedestal. These were the people that we chose to put up for our children to see.
He was a giant among all his students. And then we go to the movie on a Friday evening, and we pass by Shrewsbury Chevrolet, and we look in there. And we see our principal and our junior high principal on their knees, waxing floors. And we didn't understand it. We couldn't understand it. We felt that this is our role model. This is our teacher. And all of that was to belittle them in our eyes. Not to give us any hope that becoming educated would make you any better or open any more doors. But we had to learn to deal with that.
It came about because of the civil rights, which was passed in '64. And it gave the states in the South a chance to build buildings, because some of them had to build a building before they could integrate. So that's why it was this 5-year span. And Hempstead's began in 1966. B.G. Caesar was the superintendent at that time.
We developed a parent permit form, and we advertised, made it public through the SAMSWARDs, and mailed. I just don't know, but every parent had an opportunity to understand that there were going to be freedom of choice.
It was a good thing, but attitudes didn't make it a good thing. See, and it was an ideal thing.
Letters was sent to the parents of black kids, and I guess to the whites, but I doubt, to the black parents, and stating that there was a freedom of choice, and explained that it was an opportunity for the children to choose, for them to choose whatever learning institution that they wanted their children to attend.
I have no way of knowing whether we got all good students or all poor students or average students, or what made up that original group that came over. But I don't know this, but I'm sure that it was cultural shock that they had fear. I feel sure they did. I tried my best to do anything to eliminate that fear because it was something that just had to work.
I remember my first day, I got up early, ate breakfast, and I guess school started at 8 o'clock at that time, and I guess I wanted to get an early start, so I guess I left home, and we lived about 4 blocks from the school, and maybe 5 blocks, and I wanted to get an early start, so I left home early, I guess about, it may have been 6:45.
We had 3 black teachers and 3 white teachers to cross over. 3 of the black teachers came to Hempstead and taught half day, and 3 of the white teachers came to Sam Swartz and taught half day.
And I think I was the first white person that got real close to. Oh, they'd bump into somebody. Well, they came in, and one little black girl, she felt my arm, and I know what she expected. She touched me, and she expected me to jerk away. I stayed there. And she kind of looked at me, and she kept me, and she said, "Oh, her skin's so soft." And then she wanted to touch my hair, and I didn't jerk. I let her touch my hair. And she said, "Oh, her hair is so soft, and oh, it smells so good."
I made it out about a block from the school, and I knew I was early, and it wasn't anybody at the school at that time, so I just I'd sit on the curb. It was about a block, 2 blocks from the school. I could still see the school, but I would just sit there on the curb. I sit there right there on the curb and just look down that direction until I saw that people were actually coming in.
Now, mostly all of this was just wood. You had a few homes in here, but these trailer homes and stuff that's in here now have just been put in here in the past 2 to 3 years. This is where everybody traveled going towards the city dump.
We all knew that there was going to be some uneasement even in the process of freedom of choice, you see. And you see, because the freedom of choice even was a one-way street. It wasn't a two-way street. Nobody chose to come to where the black kids were. The black kids always had to choose to go where the white kids were.
It scared me. It really did, because I felt like what was going to happen did happen. Our good coaches were going to be relegated to equipment managers and things like that, and they were going to, of course, keep the white coaches up there as coaches, but the knowledge was coming from the black coaches, actually, because they coached.
I guess it was 1966. All of the teachers in the district were evaluated. Now, I don't know who evaluated us. All I know is Ms. Woolfolk's name was on the line for the official co-maker, and Mr. Caesar's name was just above hers. But Ms. Woolfolk said she didn't do it, so we don't really know who evaluated who. But the teachers that were on Sam Swartz campus, for the most part, were satisfactory and below. I think there might have been 2, 3 that they said was good, but for the most part, they were satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and poor.
For every black school in the state of Texas that was closed, we lost 2 principals, a high school principal and a junior high principal. And I'm talking about in rural areas.
It was a lot of mistrust or ill feeling and amongst blacks themselves, and nevertheless between the black and the white, and all this came about the same time.
I feel sure, and I had no part of this, but I feel sure some school administrators at that school level attempted to do some things that would improve that. But I don't remember any program or anything that we put in to do it.
So you count the black schools in the state of Texas, and that tell you how many principals we lost, how many head football coaches we lost, how many head basketball coaches we lost, and how many head track coaches we lost, how many band directors we lost.
It was like Sam Swartz was just dropped suddenly And all of a sudden, you're a Hempstead Elementary, or you're a Hempstead High, or you're a Hempstead Junior High. We didn't bring a name. We didn't bring a color. We didn't bring anything.
We had several blacks to live in this area, and only a few whites. But in this area, it has grown tremendously. It's kind of a mixture of blacks and Hispanics. There's a few white families that live in this area.
I remember I didn't want to be down here. And when I would drive up and I would get out of the car, I would put my head up and the way I went.
Stick your nose in the air, huh?
Right.
I don't remember.
I must say that all of the teachers, they were real nice to me. They would speak and they would be friendly, and so they really didn't make it uncomfortable for me.
And they were predominantly
white because they were predominantly.
Oh,
I was the only thing
were you?
there. Okay. I remember it. Only one there.
Well, one little girl, she was no bigger than a little bitty thing, and she was so interested in everything, and she forgot, and she said, "Mama," called me Mama. And you should have seen those little kids. They just froze. Their eyes got as big as saucers. And I said, well, smiled at her. I said, I guess you're not the first one that's going to call me Mama, and you won't be the last one. When they left to go back to their class, their whole little bunch, bye, Mama. Oh, that was, I treasured that moment terrifically.
As we, introduced ourselves and, got a talking, I don't know, it was something about us that just was like magnet. It just drew us together.
We sort of thought alike.
And we would stay long hours after school was out, talking. And she would always say to me, Church of Christ preacher needs to talk to you,
So you see that basketball goal over there? Now that's my grandson is throwing balls in there now. This is the floor where I trained my son. I started him to dribbling and maneuvering basketballs when he was a little bitty boy, and I just stayed on him, and I was just going to make him an athlete, and he was a good athlete. He was an outstanding basketball player. And when he was about, 7th, 8th grade, I had a high school basketball team, and I'd go to tournaments, and I'd let him play with those high schoolers. He was in about the 7th grade, and he was not a very large person, but he was particularly skilled in handling the ball. And boy, I was just looking forward for the time when this boy was going to play basketball on my team.
I didn't have the problem of fear when I came over as far as teaching the white children.
I was
because
concerned about it.
I felt that I could teach them. I felt that I was prepared to teach them. Where it was somewhat of fear for me was parents. I didn't know how the parents were going to accept me. And it was Edna that helped me through that period, because when the white parents would have their comments or whatever, Edna would always hear it before I got it, but I didn't know it until afterwards. And so she would always kind of set that straight. And that helped me. That helped me in the crossover.
I had phone calls at home at night with complaints about her.
And he walked in one day and said, Daddy, I want to go to Hempstead High. I thought about it, and he was going to the 9th grade. He was going to be in high school. I said, Paul, if you want to go, that's up to you. He said, yeah.
And it would all work out fine. And then I'd get a call that says, I really believe she is doing a pretty good job in there. I'd say, hey, go and sit in her class.
Really, I thought it was a good thing. I said, because I know that our family was more or less respected and accepted in the community. and it would allow the other students to feel better about integrating into other schools, and I thought it would be less problems. And he did, and he was an outstanding basketball player, and he carried the team. I say he carried the team. They went to the state, and they won all the way, and he was an outstanding athlete, period, football as well. But that was really something that I had to swallow. I just wanted to coach him, man. But I was glad that he was happy where he was.
Not only were we together in school and whatnot, but we were together with our family problems or whatever they were too. Whenever she had illness in her family, then I felt it. When I had illness in my family, then she felt it. Whatever I could do for her, then she would do it. Whatever she could do for me, then I'd do it. She had surgery, and I went and stayed with her at the hospital. When I had surgery, she cooked and brought to my house, fed my family. See?
That's right. That's
so
what
it goes
people
farther
do.
than that.
Isn't that what people do?
Everything worked out fine, and I think the only person whose heart was broken was mine. But I accepted it, and I was glad that he and his coach got along real well. They became good friends, and all of the players, and he had a good time during his high school years.
They represented the world, I know, to me, because it meant that not only I, but other kids who attended Sam Swats had skills that had and talent that had been assessed with kids all over their districts, all over the state of Texas, okay, that said that you are successful, you succeeded, you won, and it gave a community pride.
It was a reminder, it was a reflection that in spite of all that has happened here in the negative, there's still something positive for us to look at.
If I'm not mistaken, we had 2 or 3 trophy cases, and they were all filled up. And when I left school, I was wondering where we're going to put the rest of them. You know, not that they were not going to be here when we got back here. You see, so it was devastating to many of us. As a matter of fact, we met, Reverend Thomas was along with us, and we met a few times to try to find out where could we possibly, you know, find some. I mean, give us some kind of insight on where they may be.
It never was a discussion that I know of with anybody as to what we do with the old trophies. And I don't know who took them out. I don't know until this day who took them out.
Well, they're around here in the box somewhere. Okay, when did you last see them? I don't remember. I heard that. Well, who did you hear it from? Well, I don't remember. You know, and that went on for 2 or 3 years, and we got out there and really started asking folk, and we just never got anything out of it. I think the thing should have been, okay, do you all want them? Or where do you want me to put them? You know, and of course, at that time, it was not uncommon that these things to get misplaced or thrown away. You see, because many things were thrown away, you know, of ours. We were never asked if we wanted to maintain anything. You know, it's done, and you accept it, you see.
They represented nothing to anybody else, you know. And if for no more than making contact with some of the people or putting it in the paper that, you know, we no longer want these, and anybody that they represent something to, you know, please feel free to come to Hempstead High School and pick this up. And I would have gone personally and picked up all of them, you know. But and tried to find a place in a church somewhere to try to save them. But it appeared to me, and it's my own interpretation, that they did not represent a whole lot.
I think they probably got dumped out when they started closing Sam Swartz down and made it mandatory to go to Hempstead High. I think they just everything in there, and before they started tearing that red building down that was opened in 1928. I think everything that wasn't nailed down was thrown away.
And up ahead here is where we used to dump all of our garbage and trash out here under all this dirt. Our trophies from Sam Swartz.
We had the football with Winston Thomas and all those guys back there, Kirby. We had all those trophies. And we had the ribbons, you know, we had the ribbons, academic ribbons, the handwriting contests, you know, spelling contests and things like. We had all those things in those trophy cases.
Football, basketball, track. All that we won, medals, pictures, all that we won is buried in Hempstead City Dump.
You know, if something doesn't mean anything to you, then you don't really care what happens to it. But I don't think it's a person that went through Sam Swartz, that if they had known that this stuff was going to be destroyed or thrown away, that they wouldn't have made some effort.
Oh, it was our heart. It was our, like I said, the heart. It was the innermost part of us that was there. It was that integrity that you have. It's that value that you have for the school. It's the loyalty. You know, all of that. All of it was in those trophies. We cherished them.
I don't really know all of the things that transpired at that time when the trophies were brought to the dump and dumped here at the city dump. But a lot of memory for the Sam Swartz alumni are buried just on the other side of this fence. That's a part of our history that we can never, ever regain.
It's easy to create a cloud and make things look real bad. And so we need to go in there and do something about this. For example, his trophies. Now, nobody feel any worse than I do about this because we feel that something could have been done. But we also know that nothing was done. So I certainly don't expect to go down here and bomb the courthouse. I'm not going to hunt up the ex-superintendent to put a dirty note in his box.
As far as the animosity of black and white,
That's,
I don't.
that's better, I think.
Okay, yeah, it's better.
That's better.
It's better
Than it was in those early years of integration.
And the younger people, they don't see that racial barrier as broad as it was in my coming up.
Today, we're dealing with a different kind of racism, totally a different kind. And that's where the alarm go off in my head, that I can get my people to see. And the way you fight racism is through intelligence, by getting you an education, by learning what they say you can't learn, by doing the things that they feel that's it's impossible for you to do or to obtain or achieve in life.
And I think everybody needs to move toward that now, and not so much labor and dwell on what was, and not even what is, but what can be, and what can I do to help it be.
I came back to Hempstead because I want to be a part of a solution. I think it's easy to sit back and complain and say what happened in the past and all those things. But time, things still need to move on, and we need to move forward. And so that's why I want to get involved in helping improve our school district and our school system. And there's still a lot of whites who sorry that happened, and they would like to, they want to move on too. So I think as a team, we can all continue to improve and move forward.
That can be the relationship that Edna and I have, that kind of,
It's biblical. It's true that if you can be patient and wait. And my grandmother would say something like this. She said, boy, yes, ma'am. She said, every dog's got a day, but a good dog got two. 2 days, Grandma. Just be good. Don't worry about how people treat you, but you be sure you treat people right. And if right go out from you, then right will come back to you.
I had an experience less than 2 weeks ago that was shocking. And you can cut this out at a later time if you want to, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I stopped at a tire place to repair a tire for the big yellow bird, as my daughter explained the car. And while I was sitting waiting for this person to repair the tire, an elderly gentleman walked up and picked up a rubber inner tube, walked up to me and asked me, do you think this will make a good nigger shooter?
Well, see, I guess I can say all of that exists right under our very nose. And it's probably very few blacks in Hempstead that really understand or know a lot of history about the plantation, that is.
So, having had the experiences that I have, I've been in 46 states, in 3 foreign countries, and I've heard the word nigger in all of them. So this didn't particularly alarm me. So I was able to turn to the side, hopefully not having to confront him. But he walked around in front of me and repeated, say, boy, you think this will make a good nigger shooter? So I exploded. And in no uncertain terms, I explained to him to go somewhere and play with somebody else. Matter of fact, I suggested that he go home and play with his mother. Now, I know you don't need this on tape.
To hate an individual because of the color of his skin says something about the person that's doing the hating. Like, you got to be miserable. I mean, at the very core of your existence, you got to be a miserable man on the inside.
I left and came home to get another tire to put on my car. And I came back about an hour later. And when I got back, the person that told me, said, Kirby, Chief of Police been here looking for you. I said, oh? He said, yeah. So I told him what happened. I said, what did he say? So he laughed and left. So by now, you know, I'm pretty upset. So I went to the police station and introduced myself and told him that I understood that he was looking for me. Who are you? And I told him, I'm Paul Kirby. He said, oh, okay. Well, Paul, I went down and I talked to the person there, and they told me what happened, and I'm satisfied. I said, well, wait a minute, I'm not satisfied. He said, well, I talked with them, and they told me what went on. So I'm kind of frustrated, but like I said, I've been around a long time. I turned around, I walked out, I got to my car. I said, no, 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 no. I went back in, and I said, look, I want to file charges against this person. He said, well, what's the charge? I said, harassment and disorderly conduct. I named a few other things, violations of civil rights and everything I could come up with. And he said, well, you have to have witnesses. I said, oh, I have witnesses. He said, what's your name? I told him. And then he asked me, well, what was the name of the other person? I said, what? Well, what was the name of the other person? I said, you telling me that you came looking for me, not knowing who the person was, not knowing if the allegations were true or false, but you came looking for me. You don't even know who you were talking to? Now, that was the part that upset me.
I remember we used to haul hay and all that here. I guess maybe because it was kind of a taboo place. I don't remember hearing my parents say anything about it. I don't remember them saying anything about this place, even at Sam's Watch. So maybe it was something they wanted to bury. I don't know.
I'm more concerned about him than I am about the fact that this person did this, because the person that did that was an old, stupid fool. Excuse my characterization. And I possibly could have looked away. But the part that was concerning me most was the fact that it was accepted that when this person received the information, he left ready to come and get me, because this person had told him that I offended him. It didn't make any difference who he was white. And it didn't make any difference who I was either, because I was black.
One of the things that I looked at after integration, I looked at the satisfying of some groups and the appeasement of others. And children are children. Racism is still widespread, even though we say that it isn't. You can see so many examples of it. And it is that way a lot of times in the schools. And some of the parents attempt to try to protect their children in a way that they don't want them to be hurt by people who would hurt them because of the color of their skin, and not teach them. They're children, by God, and they need to be taught. And if it's reverse racism, it's still just as bad. We've got to get to a point where we try to ready the future generations for this world.
Do you wonder why young black men, intelligent young black men, are continually going to jail? Frustration. They don't feel that they have redress. They really don't feel it. I don't have a place that I can go, and I can't sound off to my parents. Many times there is no parent. They need a sounding board. They need an avenue, an outlet, someone that they know is going to take care of the problem. See, I know that I can get a problem taken care of in Waller County, in Hempstead. I already know that. But there are people that cannot, and this is why I followed up on it like I did.
From what I've heard about some of the shackles and chains of slavery, when you walk on ground like this and you're knowledgeable of some of the mistreatments that your forefathers have received,
and you say in 1999 that I couldn't have taken that. But you have to let it soak in.
Segregation itself was cruel because of what it did and its intent. Now, being segregated was not the problem, but being deprived.
We have more available for us to get now than we've ever been able to get, and yet we have less. The courthouse doesn't have that many black employees. City Hall got one. In the gas department, in the electrical department, none. And when one is brought in, it's just to dig a hole. And I'm supposed to be satisfied. And yes, we have 2 black city councilmen, black mayor, but still I'm not satisfied.
We still aren't out of the woods as it relates to complete integration. We just aren't there. We still live in our separate neighborhoods. We still go to our separate churches. We still do everything separately in a great sense. There are some doors that's been open, but a lot of the other doors were closed. You see, so in a sense, for some it made it better, for some it made it worse.
See, we used to have the home, the school, the church, and the community was made up. Home, school, church. But that's not true today. Every one of those are separate and apart. And none is doing a very good job as teaching moral values and principles and ethics and standards.
We should be much further along in the dream. They kill the dreamer, but the dream is still alive. And maybe it's because very few blacks have visited this place in Waller County. And maybe I've been a little leery myself about bringing my sons here. They are probably not familiar with the history of this plantation, but they are familiar with the detrimental things in our society.
When black history will become history, then people will accept it as such, and black kids won't feel inferior because their grandparents were slaves. See, when they get to the point where there is no inhibitions because of who you are or what you are, not necessarily who you are, then I think that they'll begin to feel better about themselves and they'll react better towards society.
If you've been free all your life, and I've been in bondage, I'm the oppressed, and you are the oppressor, we can't see God the same. We cannot see God the same. Even though God does exist, we can't see him the same. Because when you talk about him, you're going to talk about a God of blessings. I'm superior. But when I talk about him, I say he's a God, he's a deliverer. Yeah. And then in the midst of delivering me, now I can understand that he's a God of blessings.
At this point in my life, I'm right around the corner from the cemetery, up the bend from the funeral home, and round the nook from the nursing home. I need all children. And I need all children to learn. I need all children to be successful. See, because somebody will have to do my care. And I don't want a doctor operating on me that was absent on the day that they were talking about surgery, or that he is not in the district where this chemistry course is being offered, and we have to do the Robin Hood thing to help him to come up to. And that's the kind of thing we're into, and it's so crazy. It's so crazy. If we believe in the innate good of all mankind, and we want to service all children, regardless of race, creed, or color, then make things equitable. Make their education equitable. Make people accessible to them who care about them, and see that they get what they need.